Does practicing presence get me closer to no self? Does practicing presence get me closer to no self? So the most important thing to see although it's not a personal seeing, but that's what it sounds like because of the way it's phrased, is that there's nobody looking out of you now. So what you assume to be you, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your sight, your hearing, your experience, your memories, the job that you have, the bank balance you have, all of these things that you assume to be you, this is me, is not actually who you are. That's an experience happening. And to me, all suffering comes from the attachment to that. And this energetic contraction that believes that who you are is a thought, a feeling, a memory, a future idea, things, items. And that's called separation. So it's attachment to the body-mind mechanism and all thoughts and everything else that comes with that. And the belief that that is who's looking out of your eyes. That is a solid entity or soul or person that's looking out of the eyes and having a personal experience. There is seemingly the experience of somebody with a personal experience, but that's not who's actually experiencing. So what you might notice is there's something that's looking at those thoughts of you, there's something that's looking at those feelings and those ideas, those emotions, those reactions, your images of past and images of future. So the person can't actually be the experiencer because there's something that's experiencing that. It's appearing in experiencing. Like for anything to be seen and to be experienced, it has to be experienced by something. It has to be appearing and experiencing and be experienced by something. Something needs to be conscious of that. It's the person says, I am good. But that one that's saying I am good is not conscious because there's something that's conscious of that. Otherwise, the person that's saying I am good would be unseeable. So consciousness, you cannot see consciousness, you cannot look at consciousness, you cannot know what it is just being conscious. So your thoughts and your ideas about yourself are appearing, and there's something that's watching that. There's something that knows that. So those thoughts and ideas and fears and anxiety and joys and hopes are being experienced. They're not the experiencer. And this is the main teaching of non-duality. You aren't the experiencer. You are an experience. You are an experience. The you is an experience. So I've told this many times, and I should tell it again about this time. And excuse my memory if I get it muddled a little. It's getting further and further away. And it's funny, like you retell a story so many times and you begin to remember the retelling of it rather than the actual events of it. Well, that's what it's like in my brain. So quite a few years ago now, I was doing this virtual reality experience in Berlin. And basically you went into this big massive warehouse, and then they put a backpack on you and a virtual reality headset, and then they put you in individual rooms, and then you went into a game with your friend, whoever was on your team, and then you acted out a virtual reality game, and it was programmed so you never bumped into the wall in your room that you were in. So you're walking around in the virtual reality and running around sometimes, actually. You completely forget that you could bump into a wall or something in real life. And when we were doing it, my partner had given me experience in virtual reality at his apartment, and he'd given me a Star Wars game to play, and it made me feel so ill, so sick. So when I went into this one, I was a little concerned that I was going to pass out or be sick. It's because I get vertigo, and so people, I think, that get vertigo tend to find virtual reality more challenging, just like traveling is more challenging. You get sick like when I was younger, I used to often throw up in the car. Apparently the first time I did it, I was like, Mom, Dad, I was really tiny. And then I leant forward in between them and just went all over the front two seats and them. But anyway, I was concerned, and because I was concerned, I didn't really get to pick my character. It was kind of like all a bit of a haze. So I ended up as a cow. And my partner, he ended up as a fox, which I would have quite liked to be, but I became a cow. But the only way that I could know I was a cow was by looking at my hands and maybe down at my legs. I couldn't really see my face, obviously, because the cow was looking, so I could see I had two hoofs and hoofs as legs. I think I was also in a spacesuit. It was like futuristic. And then I could see my partner's body. And everything, so if the cow, like we don't have this in virtual reality yet that I know of, like if the cow that I picked thought, like Lisa would be experiencing that. So she would be watching the cow's thoughts, and she can watch the hands, and she can watch the world, and she can watch the interaction. So Lisa is watching, so nothing that Lisa sees in the virtual reality is her. So, and it's so exciting, you get so involved in it. And imagine if that went on for many, many years. You might begin to forget that you're actually Lisa because you're always experiencing the cow and the cow's feelings and the cow's thoughts. And so Lisa might be totally forgotten. And so the pointing that I'm trying to point you to is that everything that's seen inside the dream, including your character's thoughts and feelings and emotions, is not the experiencer. Just like when I was in that virtual reality, anything the cow experienced was not the actual experience, was not actually Lisa. Like everything that was seen in that virtual reality was the cow and the cow's world. It wasn't the experiencer, it was the experience. Non-duality pushes it a step further because it also says that everything you experience is yourself, like it's a dream of consciousness. Whereas that virtual reality wasn't made up by Lisa's brain. If she had a dream like that at night, you could say it's all made up from Lisa's brain or something. So everything that you see in the dream isn't who you are as consciousness. Consciousness is no thing and all things. And you could even say, if you really went to the extremity, that consciousness doesn't exist. There simply is a nothing experiencing itself as everything. So not a thing experiencing itself as all things. And then consciousness is what's used to experience itself. But it doesn't actually exist, consciousness. You can't really find it. Like all things are conscious. Like life is conscious of itself. And it's looking from particular angles. So another metaphor that you could use is the idea of a paper bag. And the paper bag, you like puncture lots of holes in the paper bag, and then you put a lamp inside the paper bag, and light comes out of all these holes. It's the one light, so one consciousness going through many holes, giving the appearance as if there's many lights. And that's the same in this dream. There is one consciousness looking out of many bodies. And then your body is maybe like, yeah, but why can't I see and remember other people's bodies? Because consciousness does not contain a brain or a memory. It is pure looking. It's the body that contains the memory. So I can only remember Lisa's memories. And sometimes when you have like these psychic experiences, you can semi-remember or see other people's experiences, but that's nothing to do with the consciousness part. That's just part of being human. We have these psychic abilities. Maybe not all of us, but like a lot of us. Like it's part of communication. It's nothing special. Like dogs are so psychic. Like lots of animals are when they live in herds or groups or packs. And ants. And also, what we think is we think that we're in control of our thoughts and our actions. But where do your thoughts come from? Like that, you come up with the idea that I'm going to choose this drink, Coca-Cola, over lemonade. But where does that choice appear from? The idea is it appears from a soul inside of me, like that there's somebody behind that, like typing in, like choose this or choose that. But it's actually coming from consciousness, which is not a thing. So you could say it's coming from no place. That's actually your experience, but you have a story which you're more attached to, which says, my choices come from time and I am the choice maker. Which is just amazing to contemplate, because so much of humans' suffering is about regret, blame, guilt, shame, what you have or haven't done. I've forgotten what the question is again now. I have to look. Does practicing know self? So what you have to ask yourself is, who is the one that's practicing no self? That even that practicing present, that either happens or doesn't happen. I think it's a really beautiful practice that stops the mind going off into its usual seeking patterns and thoughts and delusions. But who is this one that's practicing it? And who is this one that's going to get to enlightenment? All of these are concepts which don't give you anything. They maybe give you a sense of pride or a sense of cause, but in the end, they don't give you anything. Like, your true freedom is right here, beyond thoughts and ideas. They're kind of like redundant. They maybe work as some form of motivation, but it's really just stories that you're telling yourself and investing in. And even the idea that they're working as motivation is an idea. There's simply this presence, and then in that the person is moving. It's really heavenly. It's like the wind blowing. There's the appearance of free will, and the person has to live with that apparent responsibility of free will. That's the amazing game with this thing called life, as it paints us as if we have free will. Ramesh Balsekar, a teacher I used to go to in Mumbai, he would say, if life didn't paint in the appearance of free will, you'd feel trapped, you'd feel caged. So it gives this flow, this appearance. So you have the momentum that you want to go away, and go a particular way, and then you can go a particular way. And also, in the dream, the choices and the ideas are being updated by whatever the character is bumping against and experiencing inside the dream. So it's getting programmed, the character, within the dream. And it's also spontaneously appearing from nothing, which is really beautiful. So the question always is who is this one that's going to become enlightened. And who is this one doing it? There feels like there is somebody that's moving attention to presence, but that's not a separate doer. That is part of flow. There is someone that also says, oh, I'm going to have spaghetti for dinner tonight. But that is flow. That's like a magical dance happening. So there's nobody that's guilty and there's nobody that's innocent. There is just what's happening. There's also nobody that suffered. There just appears to be someone that suffered. There is just consciousness experiencing itself. And part of its experience is dreaming these people that are attached to a lie, like attached to a lie of themselves. I'm so happy this personality got into non-duality. To me, it's like the love of my life. It's such a beautiful subject. Like, I'm still so in love with it, like 20 years after I discovered it. Well, after it discovered me, or whatever the way of saying it is. It really is true freedom. You know, you're not going to find freedom in your money, your actions, your behaviors. Like, your behaviors are just going to be the way they're going to be. They will improve with this subject, and more than likely you'll become nicer, but you're still an animal.
An animal.
A human animal. And in order for you to survive, you have to consume other objects, and that's always going to be it's not a good or bad phenomena about that human, but it's like we get this impression that when you get enlightened is that you're going to not harm anything, you're going to just become really passive and be loving to everybody, and that's not the nature of the human. That I believe that it will become more in line with that, but it still has to eat, it still has to survive, it still has to do human things. And in just being alive, you have to consume other objects, which maybe society or people would call bad. But ultimately, there is no good and bad. It's a lie. There is no innocent and guilty. It's so hardcore, this message. Like, you know, don't go to your psychologist or your psychiatrist with this message. I mean, you can try sharing it with them, and maybe some are open, but it's so hardcore. It's really saying that. There's no, like, ifs and buts about the innocent and guilty. Like, the people in prison doing the worst types of crimes are just as innocent as you. It's just that in our society it's set up that that behaviour is not appropriate, and so therefore we deem them as bad, as misfits, as like having evil intent. And that's okay, all those words, to say these things, but it's also knowing deeply that there is no badness. It's okay to point them out, because maybe in pointing it out to the person, like, their attitudes and behaviours will change. But it's only what our society has deemed right and wrong. Like, in 100 years' time from now, you know, 100 years ago, it was okay to, you know, like, lock up gay people. Like, 300 years ago, it was okay to burn a woman on the stake if she showed any individuality, if she didn't obey her husband and be a male, a man's property. If she showed anything like using herbs as healing, showing any healing abilities, if she didn't conform completely to being this woman that the male society deemed that she should behave like, then she was burnt at the stake. That's only 300 years ago, and that was considered just because it was seen as really evil to not behave in this womanly manner. I mean, I would have been burnt. I have past life experiences, I feel, of being a witch that was burnt. I mean, just saying witch has got such a negative connotation in our society, but really what it was a woman that you had healing powers, maybe had lots of empathy, maybe some forms of telepathy, that could think for herself. And that's only 300 years ago. In America, it's only something like 50 or 60 years ago, 70, maybe 70, 80 years ago, that they would have public hangings. I think in this England, not public execution, but execution stopped in the 60s, and there's still a lot of people in our society that believe that people should be executed that have done something wrong. I don't, but that's what some people in society feel to be the best way to handle it. And there's so many ways that in the future we're going to be looked at, and we'll be looked at our society as barbaric. So it's not just we look back at the past, like, you know, when I was younger, it was so okay to make sexist jokes, and it's really not okay to make sexist jokes now. Like I listened to some old sitcoms from the 90s and the 80s, and they're so sexist, some of them. Now you'd get shot for that. What else? I mean, the banning of marijuana will be seen as barbaric eventually. I mean, it's absolutely barbaric that we're allowed alcohol over marijuana. It's like craziness. It's so crazy. They're beginning to change that in societies. There's so many things. The way we view sex, and our money system. The fact that we have enough food to feed everyone and we don't. We have enough money for everyone to be comfortable and we don't do that. So everything that we deem as good and bad is just what our society has set up, and in 100 years' time that'll be completely different. In 200 years' time it'll be completely different. In 500 years' time it'll be completely different. There is no good and bad. It's just a way of our society controlling each other and us being able to try and live together peacefully. Like we can see, like logically, that it's bad to murder someone, but we don't know the bigger picture. We don't know what's happening. We can't really tell why that happened, or why, or whether that's good or bad. Who knows? There might be amazing, good, positive consequences that come out of that. You know, there's that story about, like, in World War One, that Hitler fought in World War One, and he came up against, he was in the forest or something, running away, and then he came face to face with an English person, and the English person chose not to shoot him, and maybe they became friends or something, or spoke, and then Hitler left. I mean, we just don't know what is good or bad, or right or wrong, or the consequences of actions. We can't see that. We can't see the bigger picture, the bigger painting. And even if we could, how can we define it? We can only define it by what's socially fitting into conventions currently. But we take it as such a personal thing. I'm good, they are bad. This is right, this is wrong. I'm guilty, they are guilty. This should be, this shouldn't be. That's only based on our current wants and needs. And this is such a relaxing teaching, because it means that there is nobody guilty, there is nobody making mistakes. There is simply life happening. And there is also nobody to blame. They are happening. It doesn't mean you don't apologize for being a wally. That's on a different level, though. That's about human relationships and how to live a more full potential in human relationships. On the ultimate level, there is nobody that's guilty. There is nobody that's innocent. There is simply what's happening, and all the rest is stories, and we don't know in the end. We don't know, we just know this. Everything that you know is something you've been taught. It's not a unique thought. How could you ever have a unique thought? Your thoughts are like building on top of each other. Society's thoughts are building on top of each other. Everything I know and think about is something I was taught and built upon in this life. It's not my thoughts. They're something that have grown and evolved in Lisa, and they're connected to everything else that's around me. It doesn't belong to anyone. The same with what's coming out of my mouth. It's nobody speaking. It's just coming out. It's everybody speaking and nobody speaking. And then in the human level, we can say it's Lisa speaking, and she speaks like this because she liked this teacher or blah, 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 or had this experience or that experience. But that's not the truth. That's relative truth. That's how we communicate and survive in our society. The bigger truth is that we're all one big question mark. We don't know. You don't know anything. You think you know, and through believing and thinking that you know, you suffer. I know I am a person. I know that that is bad, that I am good. They shouldn't have done that. That can be said, but it's not the truth. That's just dynamics. And if someone treats you badly, you have to do that in order to put up boundaries and stop them, like stealing all your food and killing you. But it's not truth. We are one big question mark. In the end, we don't know what that was for or why that happened. We are just here experiencing an innocence. And whenever you attach to anything in the human world, attached to being a good person, attached to the outside being a bad person, attached to my story is true, attached to your money, attached to your possessions, attached to your family, whenever there is this attachment, then you suffer, because then there's a trying to hold on to it. My happiness, my freedom is dependent on all of these things. And rather than appreciating them in true unconditioned love, you appreciate them as an extension of you. There is no you. This is complete mystery. Complete and utter mystery. That my speaking is coming from no place, is coming from mystery. Your listening is appearing from mystery. Your story is making sense, but your story isn't reality. And there is this, and this is mystery. You're not somebody sitting in a room listening to Lisa on a planet in a universe. You are sitting and being in mystery, and that's terrifying to the person, because the person is attached to concepts and attached to holding everything in line to know where it is in existence. And then I can think about myself in relation to my past, in relation to future, and that is simply a functioning, and that creates suffering, because your freedom can never be found in anything that moves. Your freedom is in what's always here and present and does not move. Everything that moves comes and goes. You cannot hold on to that. It doesn't mean that you don't cry if your baby dies or you lose all your money. That's emotion. That's something in the human world. It's this beyond that, this deep knowing that that isn't your happiness. Like, we're meant to have emotion. So if something happened to your loved one, there is meant to be sadness there. You're not like a robot, but that's on the human level. But there's a deep knowing beyond that, that human isn't your love, isn't your freedom. Your freedom is this present moment. But there is great love for that human. There is great love for the objects and the possessions. But they will not complete you. Completion is now. Freedom is now. And there's nothing which can take that away. Nice.